Like, how would you feel if you went to go hang out with Jesus and he's always on the phone, like talking to someone else? You know what I mean? You'd kind of just feel like, oh man. I think that's kind of how our kids would feel if we are constantly doing that to them.
How well do you pay attention?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Welcome everyone to another episode of LED Live. Today, we are excited to be bringing a topic to you about attention. And there's a few things in this show I think that might surprise you. One of them I hope will surprise you very well, but we won't know until the end. So pay attention because you don't want to miss it. It seemed, what was it? Last year, maybe the year before, you did a show called Mesmerized. Tell us about Mesmerized.
So it's kind of just like, you know, when we look at the television and what's actually going on inside the brain, it's very similar to the same brainwave patterns as hypnosis. We experience the same sort of symptoms that you do if you were hypnotized. Your ability to track time is kind of gone, your peripheral vision is kind of gone, and you sort of zone out. So that's kind of what it was really getting to the bottom of, you know, the hypnotism basically that media can put us in.
I thought that was a really fascinating show that we did. And there were several social experiments in there that just showed how humans behave and what it takes to get us to do things. I mean, you've seen people standing in lines for, they didn't even know why. Somebody started a line and then, you know, they were waiting around. They don't know what they were waiting around. You just put up a couple of props. Or somebody sitting in a room and you can get them to stand up and sit down because everybody else is doing it, right? And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the brain as well, but we're going to talk about it from a slightly different focus. It's going to be from the perspective of attention. So I want to ask you guys some questions. Have you ever been distracted before?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
daily.
Have you ever had anybody tell you, you're not paying attention, or you're distracted, or you're not hearing what I'm saying?
Ask my wife.
Yeah, ask your wife.
We have a phrase that it says like you know, shiny object.
Yeah, shiny object. It's easy to do, and I noticed just the other day, Kendi had started asking me a question, and I could hear some of the words that she was saying, but because I was doing something else, I knew I wasn't getting it. And so I had to like stop what I was doing, have her repeat it and say, okay, what was that? And really focus on what it is that she was trying to tell me. So, question for the audience. Do you know what's going on in the world around you? And my question to follow that up is, how do you know? You believe you're making a conscious effort to pay attention right now. But we live in a world where multiple things demand our attention, right? We're even creating things to demand more of our attention. One of them is on the table in front of Scotty, right? And we can't give our attention to everything. It's simply not possible. So in reality, we filter, right? We have to. That's what our brain does. It filters information that's coming at us all the time. But history, the news, different things, social media, those things also filter.
Do you listen to Fox? Do you listen to CNN?
Yeah.
It's a different filter.
So your brain is filtering what's already being filtered. So you're really only getting a fraction of the entirety of information that's available to you. You're only getting a small window because you're further filtering out that information. Okay, so looking at this article that I pulled from the APA, it says this: just as people intuitively believe that seeing something is a matter of only opening the eyes, cognitive science also assumes that visual perception is like a videotape, that the mind records what the eyes take in. It seems to make sense, right? But increasingly, studies of visual perception have demonstrated how startlingly little people see when we're not paying attention. A phenomenon known as inattentional blindness. So
now, do they do this in like crimes when they go and they interview witnesses and stuff? Because sometimes they really have a different view based on like
Yeah, it's almost somewhat amazing that we use eyewitness accounts in court, because everything that I've read suggests that eyewitness accounts are not reliable. Because you have so many different perspectives, and because of things like this, like people miss stuff, they don't really, they think they see something that they don't. So yeah, this plays into a wide variety of situations in life.
But what does it mean to pay attention? Because I'm sure every eyewitness would say, I was paying attention, but yet taking away their perspective, their own bias, they still miss things.
Yeah, they do.
So what does it
because
mean to
you
pay
can
attention?
only process so much information visually. So at the end of the day, there are things you're going to miss. Your brain has to prioritize what it pays attention to. And we'll talk about that in a little
So
bit.
it literally could mean different things for different people.
It really could.
Wow, okay.
This research is showing us something we didn't think was the case, and that is that we can fail to perceive major things going on right in front of our eyes, remarks cognitive psychologist Bill Scholl of Yale University. In contrast with a lot of research on visual perception, these studies are truly surprising for both scientists and lay people because they're at odds of how we assumed vision worked. They go on in this article to say this: research on inattentional blindness has come to the front more recently. That work showing that people's ability to detect unexpected objects to which we aren't paying attention raises other questions, like how much visual input can the mind actually encode consciously and unconsciously? What brings some visual objects to conscious awareness? Like what makes you pay attention to certain things versus others, while others pretty much go on unnoticed? What is the fate of information that is perceived only unconsciously? There's lots of questions now about, well, how does your attention really work? What is your brain really doing? Why is it picking out certain information over other parts?
I got to use this when I talk with my wife, because I have that classic thing where it's like, can you please get the butter out of the refrigerator? And you open it up and it's like, I don't see it. She'll walk right over to be like, it's right here in the front. It's like, how do we not see things that are right in front of us?
It's really amazing. So another article from Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine was titled "The Role of Attention in Learning in the Digital Age," because that's what we're faced with now. It's not just inattentional blindness because we are, but now we're faced with all kinds of digital distractions. So it got to this section called the cognitive neuroscience of attention. And I'd just like to read this section out of here. Probably the most critical element of attention that is relevant to how information is processed in digital environments is restricted capacity. Okay, humans have only a limited neural resource to process the complexity of the surrounding environment, right? Moreover, there are an infinite number of ways in which we could act in any given situation at any given time. The cognitive ability to allocate our attention selectively allows us to prioritize only some elements of the environment while filtering out other elements. A now classic example of filtering is known as the cocktail party effect. Do you know what the cocktail party effect is? Okay, so the cocktail party effect is, imagine that you are at a party. They're using a cocktail party. And in the party, you're talking with a small group of people, but really there are maybe 5 or 10 groups of people all throughout the room. Okay, and as you're in conversation, you pretty much would think you're only really hearing the people that you're in the small group with. But the next thing you know, you hear your name. And it came from across the room. Why did you hear your name? That's the cocktail party effect, because your brain has trained itself to filter for that piece of information. And so even though it's clear across the room and you're supposedly actively listening over here to these group of people, somebody says your name across the room and now you're like, what? Somebody just said my name, because you're tuned into that. So your brain's amazing.
We call that also selective hearing.
Selective
Do you
hearing.
have that?
This was another article I found from NCBI. This is Inattentional Blindness, What Captures Your Attention. And so it's going over how do we process information. It says most mental processing occurs outside of conscious awareness. And that makes sense, right? We know that our brain is processing all these different factors in our environment. The amount of information that can be taken in by our senses is pretty much limitless. You can take in everything. And you know, they've shown that, for example, people that have photographic memories, they can go into a room and it's like their mind takes a picture of everything in the room. And if you need them to recall some detail about it, they can, because they have the photograph and it's there and they know. The actor Dustin Hoffman, he played in a movie called Rain Man, right? Did you know that Dustin Hoffman actually is able to do the things that he was doing in Rain Man?
He can count cards.
He can count cards and matchsticks and people in a room. He's one of those people that can do that. So for him, even though he's like an actor in a role, his mind is capable of doing those things.
Wow.
Have you ever seen those videos of like those people who can't forget anything? Like they literally remember everything, every experience. If you say what happened February 10th on, 1965, they'd be like, World Series, this, that. And it was like they could recall the information. That's what was really fascinating.
The guy that they based the movie Rain Man on, I don't remember his name, but he has some very unique abilities. One is he's kind of like one of those people that you were just describing, but like he can read an entire phone book and then you tell him a number and he'll tell you the name of the person.
So that
an
is
entire phone
called,
book.
Ability or
It's
skill? I mean, what is it? Like you need to train for that?
the only thing I can think of is our brain is capable of these things, but because of sin, our minds have been corrupted. And so now we see remnants of what our brain is capable in certain people. It's like that potential has been unlocked in them. Whereas in most of us, it's locked down.
It's probably a blessing, though, that we can't remember
Absolutely.
everything. You know what I mean? It's like there's things that everyone's done in their lives that they're just like, I'd like to forget that.
Yeah. And the same guy that I was talking about, the movie that they based Rain Man off of, he can read two sides of a page at the same time. One eye focuses on one page, one eye focuses on another, and he reads the page. And very quickly, it's like, for him, it's like taking a photograph.
Wow.
And goes on to the next
So
page.
for me, I mean, seriously, I've been struggling for like memorize scripture.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I mean, like I really want to get those promises, right? And it's hard. I mean, I read like 10 times, I write it down, and I don't know, it's hard.
So like Eric Wilson has said on our show, he repeats them out loud. The more senses that you involve in something, the more able you are to learn it. So if you want to remember the scripture, don't just read it, say it out loud, write it down.
Okay, I haven't tried
Those
that.
are senses that you're reinforcing that form of learning over and over again. And you have to do it multiple times, and you got to practice,
And then eat it.
You lose stuff, like Daniel. So this goes on to say, it says, our senses receive much more information than what can possibly be processed at one time. So it's reinforcing what the other two articles were saying. To combat information overload, the brain allows large amounts of information to enter, almost entirely unassimilated, and peels off just a few pieces of selected information for a closer look. And so your brain is very good at this. Like it's a master of filtering, right? Deciding what to focus on, the brain scans about 30 to 40 pieces of information. So sights, sounds, smells, tactile data. And it does this per second until something catches our attention, right? Then our attention filter selects just a small amount of information to process, and anything left over, goes in the memory bank. You're not really thinking about it. It's there, but it's kind of like, okay, put that in the file somewhere. The rest of the information never reaches your consciousness. It's in there. You just don't really get it. And that's what they're getting at with inattentional blindness. It's those parts of information that your brain took it all in, but it didn't bring it to your conscious awareness. Unfortunately, what they're saying from this is the brain is a master at filling in the gaps and compiling an integrated portrait of reality based on just a flickering view. So a lot of times we think we have the whole picture, but it's really our brain that's filling in the gaps for us, which is why it's important what kind of information that we take in.
When we worked on pseudology, and we were really trying to get to the bottom of the science of the brain and sort of its connection with media. It was really interesting to explore, like, why does a trailer work? Like, what's the mechanism that, like, everybody's like, so, you sometimes would watch the movies just to watch the trailers because they were so, like, impactful. But we kind of discovered that the brain does not like incompleteness. And so when it only gets parts of the story, it's wanting to fill in those gaps, and it's like itching to try and get the complete thing out of it. And that's what the attraction is.
And that's why cliffhangers work for shows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I need to stick around and finish this thing. Why did I just watch 45 minutes of it,
Yeah. So our visual attentiveness is really shaped by 4 factors, okay? The first one is what's called conspicuity. That's the degree to which an object or a piece of information jumps out to capture our attention. And that falls into 2 categories. There's sensory and there's cognitive. So sensory refers to the physical properties of something. So, like if there's 50 balls in a room, okay, and they're all the same color except for one, what is your brain going to gravitate toward? It's going to gravitate toward that one. Oh, that's important. That's different, right? And so it has a physical property that makes it stand out or jump out to you. They all may be white. There's a red one there, and your mind's like, oh, that's red. Becomes very obvious. And so when it comes to sensory things, when it comes to physical properties, your brain looks for physical properties and say, what stands out? Okay? Then there's the cognitive part of this. So that's the cocktail party where you're filtering out information. It seems like it's a background, but then your brain can pick something out of the background that it's in tune with, like your name or something. Okay, so that's the first one, it's conspicuity. The second one is mental workload and task interference. So inattentional blindness is more likely to occur in part of our attention if it is diverted to a secondary task. So like answering the phone while entering prescriptions on the computer, if you work at a pharmacy, or thinking about dinner plans while transcribing an order, something like that. Once you start doing multiple tasks at the same time, then it interferes with your brain's ability to process all the information correctly. And that's kind of like it makes sense, right? They say men are especially bad at this, right? Like we do not multitask well.
But can women really do that, multitask well? I mean, is it just we say that, but they can't really like?
I don't know. I kind of wonder if it's a learned behavior.
That's what I was thinking. Like it's not necessarily well or not. It might be a little better just because of habit or practice over the years. It's
something that at one time I would say I could do pretty well, but now not so much. I worked a job in ag chemistry where, it was a lab, they brought in samples, and on that sample, you might have to run half a dozen tests. It's like, okay, no big deal. There's kind of a sequence in order that you would do things in. But what if they bring you 6 different samples? And they all kind of bring them pretty close to the same time. Now you have to do all these tests, prioritize what's going on, realize who needs what first, and get all the tests done, and you can't forget any of them, right? And somebody's gonna be calling you on the phone. So that was a job where everybody had to be very good at multitasking. Yeah. Because not only are you running the samples, then you gotta go enter data in the computer, and you've gotta answer the phone, and there's all these things going on. And if you make a mistake, people are not happy. Like you are costing us money, right?
So I don't know if that's multitasking or being efficient.
It was multitasking because you were having to do multiple things at the same time.
At the same time.
Test and test and test and test. So you're running multitest. Efficiency did play a factor, but you're also multitasking too. Okay. So, but again, it's kind of one thing that we kind of intuitively know. If we're doing lots of different things at the same time, it's going to affect our ability to pay attention.
Because just having this conversation with my mom who's done research on this, and she was just like, we need to make sure we understand what multitasking is. It is very much impossible to multitask in the sense of doing 2 things at the same exact time. What really is happening is someone has gotten proficient at switching very quickly. There's no downtime, let me remember what I need to do. It's like, no, I can do this, then this, then this, one right after the other. And that's what makes it so different.
So next thing that they put in was expectations. Okay, expectations have a powerful effect on our ability to pay attention and notice information. So they use the example of drugs. If the drug we are looking for comes in a carton with a highly stylized label, for example, we come to expect this every time we get that medication. If a new medicine comes in a similar looking carton, then our brain will not pay attention if any information negates our belief that the new drug is the old one. Okay, so this is what they call this is confirmation bias, essentially, and they say that experienced healthcare workers are actually most prone to this. So if we expect it to be a certain thing, then we kind of dismiss anything about it that would necessarily be new if it looks the same as it did before, because it always looks that way, right? So why would it be any different?
Is that intentional
give me
in
an
production?
example.
So like, for instance, Nutella, right? When it first came out, it had a certain look. I think it was a darker color because it was like the real thing. And years later, it actually started getting lighter and lighter. Turns out they were using different ingredients, but people are still buying it. They love it. Is it because they're associating it with that first product, which was higher quality?
All right, well, the last one on the list was capacity. And the capacity to pay attention varies from person to person. It's influenced by age, mental aptitude. Also, the other things play a factor like distractions, alcohol, drugs, fatigue. You have all that. So you only have so much capacity to pay attention to so many things.
Now, based on this is kind of scary information, because you think about all those people that are like text messaging, while driving. I mean, you're doing a very complicated task that is happening very fast. And it's like your attention already, it takes a lot of attention to go through a page, change something, look up something. I've driven next to people and seen them totally like this. It's just like, wow.
And what do you miss in that split second that you take your eyes off the road?
Yep.
It's not just that. It brings me back to your boat analogy. If you get off course by like a millimeter, you're going to end up somewhere. The road is constantly shifting and changing. You can't stay straight the whole time, or else you'll land in a ditch.
Yeah.
What was that nautical term? That was basically like, it was like a nautical term that like veer.
Vector?
I think veer, isn't veer a nautical term?
Like veering
To
off.
veer away, yeah. But it's like veer is ever so slight, and
Exactly.
over the course of time it gets.
So you're looking down, not paying attention that you need to turn, and it's a disaster. But interesting, you said a phrase like the brain only has a certain capacity. Can you read that again?
So they're saying that this affects our visual attentiveness, and capacity to pay attention varies from person to person.
Okay.
So
have you ever?
go ahead.
Have you ever heard that your environment will affect your attention, or like anything having to do with focus, like if you're studying or doing anything like that? So if you're in a room full, like if your desk is full of papers, that will affect how you pay attention. You think it's because you're overstimulating the brain with all this other stuff that it can't directly focus on what you're doing?
Well, I guess it could be. I guess in thinking of studying, it's like, why do people go to libraries, right? Because it's quiet.
Yeah.
You're not surrounding yourself with a lot of other people that can talk to you or interfere with you. When you go to the library, you're typically selecting like one or two books to focus on. You bring that to a space that you have of your own.
Clean
It's really
environment.
minimizing the different distractions that can come into your life.
One of my roommates in college was, he went into medical school, ended up being an orthopedic surgeon. And this kid, I swear, was a unique individual because he would sit and listen to heavy metal. I mean, it wasn't just like, rock and roll. It was like death metal. And he'd study biology. And I was just like,
What?
I can't even study. And I'm over here in the corner. And I mean, he's just like literally focusing on it and just reading the pages and doing the work and just listening to this crazy sounds in his ears.
So A C is a pass, and you still become a doctor.
So this kid
Scary
literally showed up at class, the minimum requirement that you could. He would take the test, like literally wouldn't study. I never saw this guy actually even study, really. Top grade the whole time.
What?
So I asked him one time, I said, how is this even possible? Like, you don't study. Like, I live with you. I know what you're doing. He said, well, as a kid, I learned to read things all around me. Anytime there was words, I read them. Cereal box, as I would eat my cereal, I'd read it. And he just developed a real good reading habit, and he wouldn't tell you he had a photographic memory, but he said he only needs to read something once and he's got it. I was like, oh man, that's cheating.
Guys watching, the exception is definitely not the rule.
Yeah,
so
right.
put that out there.
I have a brother-in-law that was that way. He would go to class the bare minimum, and the teachers would try to like throw in quizzes to like throw him off. He'd always go like ace the test, like no issues.
It's not fair.
It's not.
Must be nice.
So one of the things that is taking and directing our attention these days is social media, right? Definitely is a distracting influence to people, and it prevents us from paying attention to sometimes the world around us, sometimes the immediate world around us. And we're going to touch on what some of those categories might be. We made a documentary on that called #Selfie, and we would encourage you to take a look at that and see what effect social media has on your life. So a few questions to stimulate discussion. Are we paying attention to our children?
I think it's kind of a sad situation that we've sort of backed ourselves into this work mode in our culture, that it's like that's top priority, and it's like both parents have to go and work because they need the boat, the car, the nice fancy houses and all this kind of stuff, and then we just farm the kids off to daycare centers. And it's really interesting to observe what happens at those daycare centers. They literally plop them in front of a TV. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the TV has now become the educator of the children. And yeah, we as parents, I mean, not in my household, I hope that I'm paying attention to my kids, but I think the majority of households don't pay attention to their kids.
Yeah. I find that you have to be very intentional these days because it's so easy to get distracted by, like, your phone, for example, It's like, oh, somebody's trying to get a hold of me, or, oh, there's another email that come in, or a text message, or whatever. And if you think about it, you're at work for 8 hours. You see your kids for an hour, maybe 2 hours in the morning, and then 2, 3, maybe 4 hours at night. You're not spending as much time with them throughout the week as you are with other people. And so when we have that time with them, we really need to focus on our kids. We have a certain window of time that we have influence over them, and then we can get to guide them and shape them. And so I think it's important that we pay special attention to our children and make sure that they're not feeling neglected. And kids, what they'll kind of do is they'll be like, okay, well, they just don't pay attention to me. They'll just go off and find something else to do, or not really show as much interest in you because you haven't shown as much interest in them. And it happens slowly over time. And so it's kind of a scary thing. You wake up one day and it's like, I don't know my kid. So we need to pay attention to our children.
I've heard it's also good practice when you are hanging out with your children to individually kind of hang out with each one and enter into their world instead of always pulling them into your world. So to be intentional, to sit down and say, okay, for the next, hour, 30 minutes or whatever we're going to do, what would you like to do? Would you like to go outside? Would you like to throw a ball? Would you like to do this or that? And have those children suggest those things to you, and then they feel that connection to you.
That's a good point. Thinking of quality over quantity, because you could spend all day with your kid and nothing was accomplished. They don't feel any closer to you. But if you take that hour and you really resonate with them, that'll make all the difference in the world.
I mean, I remember growing up, in the elementary school. It was maybe in the middle, not high school. What's called the other one?
Middle school?
Yeah, middle school. When you have a little more freedom, and we didn't have social media, right? I mean, early 90s.
You didn't have social
media?
Social media?
You had to play outside?
You play outside.
What a child.
You hang out with your friends and stuff like that. We're talking about the time, spending time with their parents or parents with their kids. And I didn't see my parents that much, you know. I didn't spend time with my parents, or maybe they didn't say, hey, just go outside, you know, whatever. But
Exactly.
I don't think so is you know, it's different, because you can be not having social media, you know, we talk about, or internet, or the kids that are outside, but you don't spend time with the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not just like media or something like that. I mean, maybe you don't have social media, but the point is that spend time with your kid.
I agree.
Yeah.
How would you feel if you went and spent time? Well, like, I think that one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to is hanging out with Jesus, right? Like, how would you feel if you went to go hang out with Jesus and he's always on the phone, like talking to someone else? You know what I mean? You'd kind of just feel like, oh man. And I think that's kind of how our kids would feel if we are constantly doing that to them.
Yeah.
You know?
So I want to show you guys a video of a social experiment on how easy it is to be distracted and lose your kid.
Emily is concerned that her husband's not paying attention to her child at the park because he's always texting on his phone and making phone calls and doing work through his cell phone. So we're going to be going to the park today to stalk him, see if we catch him on his phone, and then go try to abduct the child. So what do you think will happen when we go?
I think it's possible if you call him over, he's going to come and his father's not going to be paying attention. So you definitely have a chance of scooping him up.
Look, he's texting. I'm gonna go now. Want candy? Let's go. Want some more candy? Yeah? You can come with me. We'll go get more. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Where's the other kid?
It's over here. I don't have any candy. Stay here. Be quiet.
Josh, where are you?
What the f is wrong with you? You're not paying attention, you're sitting there on the phone, not paying
I don't know
attention?
where the he is. Where is he?
That's because you're not paying attention to him. Where'd he go?
Where did he go? Josh!
We set you up because I knew you don't pay attention when you have your son.
Oh, please, leave me alone.
We set you up. I saw you texting, so I abducted him with some candy.
Thank God. Come here, buddy. Thank God.
So, you know to keep an eye on him? Because it was just like that. I abducted him and took 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's just yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been guilty of that kind of a thing, you know, just like, you know, you're trying to respond to somebody and you're with your kids and you're watching them. I mean, it's like, yeah, it just takes a second to take your eyes off of them.
But
Yeah.
can you guys relate to the thing a lot of mothers say that, oh, if it's too quiet, something's going on. So you might not be actively listening, but you kind of, you have a sense that
you
my
need the
child is
noise.
in my presence. So the fact that he was able to let this person walk away, and I don't know what was the span of time where he wasn't hearing anything. Probably when he finished sending the text, he looks up, where's my kid?
Yeah, it wasn't, at least in the video, that long of a time that he sat there. You know, it wasn't like 15 minutes later. That would have been even more alarming.
But how quickly that can happen.
Oh, yeah.
And if that was somebody who had nefarious intentions, kid is gone in the back of a van,
Yeah.
never see him again.
I got a bunch
So-
of Amber Alerts yesterday. Did you guys get those?
Yes.
You know, and
Oh,
I
it's
always think
heartbreaking.
too, it's just like, oh man.
Yeah.
So pay attention to kids, not just for their safety, but also for their well-being, for their spiritual development, for your relationship with them. It's important that we pay attention to our children. Another category I thought of, are we paying attention to our friends and family? Do you keep up? Do you know how people of your circle are doing? Do you notice when people are, you know, something's off, that's not quite right, or they're down, or whatever? You know, keep hitting the social media thing with kids. You know, they can have Facebook depression, and as a parent, you wouldn't know it because there's specific things that you have to look for, and usually require some kind of clinical diagnosis. But you would think everything is fine. is everything fine? Do you check in with people? Do you see how they are? Do you know like what's going on? Like your brothers, your mom, your parents, your kids, your friends, what's going on in their life?
You know, it's sometimes hard, I think, especially like, you know, work stresses or something, you know, and you're just like, you know, hey, do I ask? Do I maybe not want to know? Is something going on at somebody's house? But I think you're right. It's like we should be, you know, having open dialogue with those around us. And, you know, I think I had a friend when I was in Los Angeles that ended up committing suicide. And I hung out with him a couple days before he did it. And I would not have known, like literally would not have known. And so I didn't ask, I didn't inquire or anything like that. And maybe, you know, I don't know if he would have been honest and told me, but it's kind of
There's a study that shows that couples, specifically married couples, are happier and make more money in the long run than single people. I wonder if it's because although both parties, those are single and are a couple, have work in their lives, there's different priorities. For the couple, they also have the element of family. They're driving each other, possibly spending time with each other, keeping each other balanced, versus the single person may not have that as frequently. So having that priority with your family at all times. So even if you have to do that slight multitask, shift focus, not always be focused on work, it's still essential, it's still important to reprioritize, have them at the center at all times, despite whatever else is going on.
Have you ever noticed as sometimes there's elderly couples and a spouse dies, and then not long after, the other one passes too?
6 months later or something.
Yeah, that happens in a lot of cases, not every case, obviously, but I think for people who are become alone, one of the things that keeps them going, there's a few things, but one is having other people around. Like they feel like they have someone to keep living for. Another thing is routine. People that develop a highly structured routine, it helps them live longer, actually, because they're like always, there's that expectation that they're going to do the same thing over and over again. So I want to show you guys another video where you look like you were going to say something though.
Yeah, kind of interesting what you were saying, like, you know, hey, have you checked your friends or you check your, you know, your family, you know, stuff like that. A couple months ago, I did this, I don't know if it was, you know, a project, I don't know, I was just thinking in my mind, I was like, you know what, I'm going to be, you know, on Sundays or something like that, I'm going to be spending, you know, a couple hours of my time to call my friends, you know, like a video call, Facebook, you know, stuff like that. I mean, the people that I haven't seen, you know, after high school, you know, 20 years, something like, I just see a few things in social media, what happened, but I just want to call them, you know. So I did that, maybe like 5 people, you know, just call them, video call, and they're like, whoa, hey, you know, what's up, you know, and 2 of them, I mean, they really, you know, they told me like, hey, you know what, you know, after high school, I did this, and thanks so much for calling, and I just see your pictures, you know, on Facebook and social media, and thanks so much for, you know, taking the time, you know. But it was the friendship that sometimes you think like, hey, it's only, you know, 20 years of I haven't talked to this guy. But when you just see him, you know, or talk to him, it's kind of like you going back to the to the last minute. You say, hey, see you later, man. You know. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, here's another video, another social experiment. I thought it was really fascinating to see how well we actually pay attention to those around us.
I love my family, and we have had a very amazing life together. A lot of people wish they had family, and they don't have family, so I'm thankful for my family that we have. And they're so supportive of me, that's the thing, because I sing, and I'm always out somewhere, and they're always cheering me on.
Okay, Lori and I are like a car battery. She's the positive, I'm the negative. That's what we joke about a lot, because it keeps the car going. We've been together 16 years, and I can tell you I've never met a woman in my life. She's so friendly, she's so full of love. She would help a stranger out, a complete stranger out.
I know Celine since I was 10. We grew up in the same small city in Madagascar. We did a lot of travels together. We went especially to Morocco twice together. We have so many great memories together. I love her.
So my niece and I became really close after a basketball camp that I brought her to when she was 9 years old. And we've been playing basketball ever since. Taught her how to dribble between her legs. I taught her how to do the killer crossover, and it's really quick. She finally has it. Now she gets me. We have a special connection through that.
Oh my God, that's Lori. That's my wife. I walked right by her, I didn't recognize her. Oh my God, I didn't even pay attention to her when she's there.
Wow. Total surprise. I had no idea. I mean, she looked, my niece, it was a little familiar, but I was in a hurry.
I'm good. Because that's heartbreaking to see my family on the street.
It makes me realize how people don't even pay attention to homeless. It could be anybody. It could be you. It could be me. It could be my best friend.
Fascinating.
Yes, very.
Would you recognize one of your family members
I would
if
hope
they
so.
were homeless? I mean, all of those people probably would have said, "Oh yeah, I probably would," right? And they didn't. And it just goes to show, even though it's about homeless people, it just goes to show how little we pay attention and how we could see our family member, but not see our family member. And how often does that happen in maybe less dramatic ways in life? Well, we're seeing people and we're hearing people, but we're really not seeing what's going on and we're really not listening. And so then we miss those cues that lead to tragic things, like your friend who committed suicide and you just talked to him a couple days before. Didn't know, right? So, going along with this theme of paying attention, it's important to pay attention, even to small things, little things, because we can miss so much.
I think just slowing down too, take life a little bit slower. There, just I think we're in this rat race that makes it difficult, and I also think that compounds into a problem if we're spending so much time on all these other things and we're so busy and we just have no time for anything. The person who really gets the short end of the stick is God, and sometimes we do not spend time with Him because we have all these other things going. And I like what Martin Luther said. He's like, I have to spend 3 hours plus in prayer because I have so much I have to do,
I think also we're all different. And I think first we need to pay attention to ourselves, not being selfish, but say it how it is, pay attention to ourselves in order to equip ourselves to pay attention to others. Because some people, it's just innate. I have been told that I am more observant than the average person, but also in my upbringing, one of the first lessons that I remember learning as a child was always make eye contact. If someone's talking to you, if you see someone, if someone's trying to get your attention, make that eye contact. But that's something that needed to be learned, training. So if something doesn't come natural to you, such as being observant, looking at everything around you, then maybe be more intentional about that down the road. But also we've learned now that it doesn't matter how observant you are, you still miss stuff. So even the most observant person needs to pay attention as well.
Yeah. So next question, are we paying attention to our community, right? As Christians, we have a responsibility to reach out to the community around us, right? There are needs in our community. The communities are made of people, and that's what we're all about, is trying to help those people prepare for Jesus coming again, right? So what is your community going through? A lot of times, for example, a church may move into an area and they might, let's just say, start a program. It doesn't do any good to start that program unless you know that your community actually needs that program. So it's better to ask first, go around, ask the neighbors, do surveys, whatever, and find out what do they actually need. Maybe they don't need an after-school program. Maybe they really need help with finances. And so your church would be better serving those people by holding like a financial peace seminar or something instead of having an after-school program. So find out what the needs of your community are. So I want to show you guys another video, and this is probably the second to last one. And just again, with the theme of paying attention. It's going to be a slightly different perspective though. This is going to be from a TED Talk and a guy who studies people for a living as a pickpocket. So I hope you haven't seen this before.
Do you think it's possible to control someone's attention? Even more than that, what about predicting human behavior? I think those are interesting ideas if you could. I mean, for me, that'd be the perfect superpower. Actually, kind of an evil way of approaching it. But for myself, in the past, I've spent the last 20 years studying human behavior from a rather unorthodox way, picking pockets. When we think of misdirection, we think of something as looking off to the side when actually it's often the things that are right in front of us that are hardest things to see, the things that you look at every day that you're blinded to. For example, how many of you still have your cell phones on you right now? Great. Double check, make sure you still have them on you. I was doing some shopping beforehand. Now, you've looked at them probably a few times today, but I'm going to ask you a question about them. Without looking at your cell phone directly yet, can you remember the icon in the bottom right corner? Bring them out, check, and see how accurate you were. How'd you do? Show of hands, did we get it? Now that you're done looking at those, close them down, because every phone has something in common. No matter how you organize the icons, you still have a clock on the front. So without looking at your phone, what time was it? You just looked at your clock, right? It's an interesting idea. Now I'll ask you to take that a step further with a game of trust. Close your eyes. I realize I'm asking you to do that while you just heard there's a pickpocket in the room, but close your eyes. Now, you've been watching me for about 30 seconds. With your eyes closed, what am I wearing? Make your best guess. What color is my shirt? What color is my tie? Now open your eyes. By show of hands, were you right? It's interesting, isn't it? Some of us are a little bit more perceptive than others. It seems that way. But I have a different theory about that model of attention. They have fancy models of attention, Posner's trendy model of attention. For me, I like to think of it very simple, like a surveillance system. It's kind of like you have all these fancy sensories, and inside your brain is a little security guard. For me, I like to call him Frank. So Frank is sitting at a desk. He's got all sorts of cool information in front of him, high-tech equipment. He's got cameras. He's got a little phone that he can pick up, listen to the ears, all these senses, all these perceptions. But attention is what steers your perceptions, is what controls your reality. It's the gateway to the mind. If you don't attend to something, you can't be aware of it. But ironically, you can attend to something without being aware of it. That's why there's the cocktail effect. When you're in a party, you're having conversations with someone, and yet you can recognize your name, and you didn't even realize you were listening to that. Now, for my job, I have to play with techniques to exploit this, to play with your attention as a limited resource. So if I could control how you spend your attention, if I could maybe steal your attention through a distraction. Now, instead of doing it like misdirection and throwing off to the side, instead what I choose to focus on is Frank. To be able to play with the Frank inside your head, your little security guard, and get you, instead of focusing on your external senses, just to go internal for a second. So if I ask you to access a memory, like, what is that? What just happened? Do you have a wallet? Do you have an American Express in your wallet? And when I do that, your Frank turns around. He accesses the file. He has to rewind the tape. And what's interesting is he can't rewind the tape at the same time that he's trying to process new data. Now, I mean, this sounds like a good theory, but I could talk for a long time and tell you lots of things, and they may be true, a portion of them. But I think it's better if I try to show that to you here live. So if I come down, I'm going to do a little bit of shopping. Just hold still where you are. Hello, how are you? It's lovely to see you. You did a wonderful job on stage. You have a lovely watch that doesn't come off very well. Do you have your ring as well? Good, just taking inventory. You're like a buffet. It's hard to tell where to start. There's so many great things. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Hi, sir, could you stand up for me, please? Just right where you are. Oh, you're married. You follow the directions well. That's nice to meet you, sir. You don't have a whole lot inside your pockets. Anything down by the pocket over here? Hopefully so. Have a seat. There you go. You're doing well. Hi, sir. How are you? Good to see you, sir. You have a ring, a watch. Do you have a wallet on you? I don't. Well, we'll find one for you. Come on up this way, Joe. Give Joe a round of applause. Come on up, Joe. Let's play a game. Pardon me. Don't think that you need this clicker anymore. You can have that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Come on up to the stage, Joe. Let's play a little game. Now, do you have anything in your front pockets? Money. All right, let's try that. Can you stand right over this way for me? Turn around and let's see. If I give you something that belongs to me, this is just something, a half poker chip. Hold out your hand for me. Watch it kind of close. Now, this is a task for you to focus on. Now, you have your money in your front pocket here? Yep. Good. I'm not going to actually put my hand in your pocket. I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. One time a guy had a hole in his pocket, and that was rather traumatizing. I was looking for his wallet, and he gave me his phone number. It was a big miscommunication. So let's do this simply. Squeeze your hand. Squeeze it tight. Do you feel the poker chip in your hand? I do. Would you be surprised if I could take it out of your hand? Say yes? Very. Good. Open your hand. Thank you very much. I'll cheat if you give me a chance. Make it harder for me. Just use your hand. Grab my wrist, but squeeze. Squeeze firm. Did you see it go? No. No, it's not here. Open your hand. See, while we're focused on the hand, it's sitting on your shoulder right now. Go ahead and take it off. Now, let's try that again. Hold your hand out flat. Open it up all the way. Put your hand up a little bit higher, but watch it close there, Joe. See, if I did it slowly, it'd be back on your shoulder. Joe, we're going to keep doing this till you catch it. You're going to get it eventually. I have faith in you. Squeeze firm. Squeeze. You're human. You're not slow. It's back on your shoulder. You were focused on your hand. That's why you were distracted. While you were watching this, I couldn't quite get your watch off. It was difficult. Yet you had something inside your front pocket. Do you remember what it was? Money. Check your pocket. See if it's still there. Is it still there? Oh, that's where it was. Go ahead and put it away. We're just shopping. This trick's more about the timing, really. I'm going to try to push it inside your hand. Put your other hand on top for me, would you? It's amazingly obvious now, isn't it? It looks a lot like the watch I was wearing, doesn't it?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Oh, thanks. But it's only a start. Let's try it again a little bit differently. Hold your hands together. Put your other hand on top. Now, if you're watching this little token, this obviously has become a little target. It's like a red herring. If we watch this kind of close, it looks like it goes away. It's not back on your shoulder. It falls out of the air, lands right back in the hand. Did you see it go? It's funny. You got a little guy, he's union. He works up there all day. If I did it slowly, if it goes straight away, it lands down by your pocket. I believe, is it in this pocket, sir? No, don't reach in your pocket. That's a different show. Sorry, that's rather strange. They have shots for that. Here, can I show him what that is? That's rather bizarre. Is this yours, sir? Yes. I have no idea how that works. We'll just send that over there. That's great. I need help with this one. Step over this way for me. Now, don't run away. You had something down by your pants pocket. I was checking mine. I couldn't find everything. But I noticed you had something here. Feel the outside of your pocket for a moment. Down here, I noticed this. Is this something of yours, sir? Is this? I had no idea. That's a shrimp.
Yeah, saving it for later.
You've entertained all these people in a wonderful way. Better than you know. So we'd love to give you this lovely watch as a gift. Hopefully it matches his taste. But also we have a couple of other things, a little bit of cash. And then we have a few other things. These all belong to you, along with a big round of applause from all your friends. Joe, thank you very much. So, same question I asked you before, but this time you don't have to close your eyes. What am I wearing? Attention is a powerful thing. Like I said, it shapes your reality. So I guess I'd like to pose that question to you. If you could control somebody's attention, what would you do with it? Thank you.
Now that we know that he changed shirts, if you watch it again, then you'll see exactly when he changed his shirt. It's sort of like...
Probably when he went up front. Like he was walking.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't even see it. But it's like when you watch a show and then you watch it again, you watch it a third time. When you're reading, when you're reading God's word, like you're seeing different things at different times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's what's scary is this like this is clearly something that we know exists, right? This is real. Yeah. This is something that you can put your fingers on and say, this is happening over here. Now, what if somebody maliciously wanted to use this technology? That's where it gets scary, I think, for me.
I mean, yeah, like you were saying, I mean, taking the time when you read the Word of God, I mean, different, many times, I mean, you get different information, but
from the same
like this guy, I mean, he changed the whole outfit like I went. I mean, I was just looking at it.
Yeah.
So I was
Did you catch that?
Like when he did it? No.
No. Did you notice that he did do it early?
No.
Or until he asked the question?
No. Before he asked it, I did notice that his shirt was outside of his pants.
Yeah, that's where I saw that.
That was the only thing. But
and
the color changed and the no tie, until he asked, I was like,
so there's a certain point, though, that you're like, wait a minute. He had to do that. When did he do it?
Well, I didn't do that.
I had to run it back and watch it.
Okay, so my guess is when he brought the man up front. While he was walking up front.
Yes, while he was walking up to the front and handing off the clicker and all that, he's simultaneously undoing his tie.
So our focus is on, is he tricking those people as he's talking to them?
He's almost using an audio cue as well. Like
it's a trick within a trick.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not taking anything from those people. He's actually changing his clothes. But we have no idea that's going on. Wow.
So how he can change his clothes? I mean, he had a jacket on.
Yeah, well, the jacket didn't change.
So he just pulled it like that?
Yeah, somehow. I mean, lost the tie.
I think it's the very key
shirt.
of magic, right? When you really sit and distill down what magic is.
Well, illusion. Because magic is...
This is true. Yes,
real.
yes. Illusion, like magic is as in like carnival type, like somebody up there just doing cards or something like this. But they're just diverting your focus and your attention so they can do something over here.
Yeah.
Distracting.
We need to pay attention to that.
Yeah, we do have to pay attention. So.
Well, going back to your thing about community, we can use that as an illustration because we were so focused on one thing that wasn't particularly bad. So when you think of community, you're focusing on that one family that needs help. But what is being neglected? So actually being intentional about changing up your focus within community, reaching the different needs will help, not neglect a certain area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have to pay attention to multiple things for sure.
Yeah.
And it certainly makes sense for multiple eyes to be on multiple, to be on those things so that everybody is giving input. Like, but did you catch that? Or did you catch that?
Yeah. You should be an expert in this, Keith, right? Having 4 kids.
I should be, but my wife's probably better at it than I am. Are we paying attention to our broader world, right? We live in a world where lots of things are going on. And even though we have like all these news networks and, social media, which isn't exactly entirely reliable for news, fake news spreads 6 times faster than real news. So even though you have all of these outlets and all this information, again, it goes back to you can only pay attention to so much, right? And so even though all the information is there, it's available, you have the internet, you can Google things, you can watch things, you can take it all in, you can't really take it all in. There's only so much you can focus on. So we have to really be very intentional what we pay attention to and very specific. After seeing that video, I hope that we have your attention, right? And that, because we talk about paying attention to things in the media. That's what we do, Did you guys know this or did you know that? And we're trying to get you to see things that are there that weren't entirely obvious, right? And so that's part of our work is helping you know what to pay attention to and bring that out to the forefront of your consciousness. So, are you paying attention to the broader world? Jesus said this in Matthew 25:13. He said, "Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour which the Son of Man is coming." Jesus is telling us, pay attention, right? Be alert, be watchful. He told us many things would happen in the last days, and that some of those things would be designed to deceive us. In fact, multiple times Jesus said in Matthew 24, "Do not be deceived." Why? Because the possibility exists for deception, and on a big, broad, grand scale. So, Jesus has warned us ahead of time. I can think of 3 types of deception that I'd like to talk about just briefly as we're coming to the end of this program. One is self, one is societal, and the other is supernatural. Okay? Start with self-deception. The Bible says, for sin, taking occasion by the commandment, deceived me, and by it killed me. Sin is deceptive. It is self-deceptive, right? The Bible says in Jeremiah 17:9, it says that the heart is deceitful above all else and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So the way I like to rephrase that is, more than anything in this world, your heart will lie to you. It's the greatest liar. Like your heart, because it's influenced by sin and Satan, but it'll lie to you better than other people will. So are you experiencing some self-deception? We did this program recently with the Held Singers, and one of the books that they were recommending for people who had mental health struggles was a book called Telling Yourself the Truth. Because there are people that are not very good at telling themselves the truth about themselves. I'm worthless, nobody loves me, I could never do that, right? We tell ourselves all these kind of lies, and that's what sin does. It causes us to be self-deceived.
I like that Dove commercial where they'd ask people to describe themselves.
Oh yeah.
And then they were,
that'd have been a great video to include in here.
Describing it as they're more ugly, but like when someone else would describe them, they'd be beautiful,
Yeah. So another category, societal deception. The Bible says in Matthew 24, for false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And this kind of borders on the supernatural as well. But the purpose of this deception is to deceive society at large, to deceive the whole world. That's what Revelation 13 talks about, is that deception is coming to the whole world. We have to pay attention. We have to know, like, what is that deception? How is it going to happen? Will I recognize the signs when it does happen? And to do that, we have to study our Bibles, which means we have to direct our attention and focus there. Know what it says, otherwise we're sitting ducks, right?
Even the elect, they can be deceived.
Could be, yeah. Last category, supernatural deception. It says this in Revelation 19:20, then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped his image. These were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. The audio visuals at the end of time will be overwhelming, right? They will be designed, they are specifically designed to deceive and mislead you. You're gonna see miracles, you're gonna see, like this says, signs in the heavens, signs in the earth. You're gonna see all kinds of things that are only there to lead you astray. That's what Satan does.
That's why I believe it says, if it does not speak according to the law and to the testimony, it is because there's no light in it. Like if you have to kind of constantly balance what you're perceiving or anything through that biblical filter.
Yeah. And so media is almost a bit of a test to the broader things that are going to be happening, right? If we can't discern what it is that's being put before our eyes on a daily basis, how are we going to discern greater and grander deceptions that are happening in the world? So important that you learn to discern and pay attention to the media that's coming into your life so that you can filter that properly.
Yeah, we have a responsibility, but there's also another party involved. You were talking about how do we pay attention to the world around us? We have our kids, our community, and the whole world. It's nearly impossible. Scientifically, it's impossible. But yet, Jesus says in Matthew chapter 28, he gives specific instructions. Verse 19, go ye therefore and teach all nations. That's the entire world. So he wants us to pay attention. And I think he did that, even knowing the science, because he wants us to include him in that action.
There's a couple of things here. One, I think that the Bible is there for us specifically so we know. It helps us learn how to filter, and specifically what we know so we can be equipped on what to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Secondly, God has given us his Spirit also to prompt us and cue us in at the right time, at the right place, so that we know, oh yeah, that's something I should pay attention to. And it brings to our mind the appropriate thing. So it's like it's an active agent in helping us filter. But we need that divine help, like you're saying, for sure. So I want to show you this video. Mikey showed this to me, and it's an example of some of the deceptions that are coming as we get closer and closer to the end of time. Okay, so here we go. This is a guy who is explaining things from the Bible, but he's then also mixing in his interpretation of prophecy and also the apocryphal books and all kinds of stuff.
And these people who are left behind will see my salvation, that's Jesus, Yeshua, and the end of my age. They will see the people who had been taken up, the wise virgins, earlier, and who haven't tasted death from their birth. That's the first fruits translated ones. Those who reside in the earth. Then it says, those who reside in the heart of the earth, that would be dead people, will be changed and converted to a different spirit. We're going to have dead people come back to life. But it's not the resurrection at the last trumpet, though. Daniel 12:2 makes a version of this. Then evil will be erased and grief extinguished. Faith will flourish because there's a revival going on. When you have your dead grandmother walking into a room with your lukewarm family and she's going to talk about Jesus, your family will all be saved. For that relative of yours who committed suicide 30 years ago, maybe she'll come back and she'll explain what happened.
So, you hear what this guy is teaching.
Yeah.
He's saying, no,
saying a lot of things.
I'm going to submit, this is false teaching, okay? We're going to clear that up right from the get-go. Okay. False teaching, but he's saying, oh yeah, your dead relatives are going to come back and teach you about Jesus.
And he got it from the Bible, yeah?
Yeah, he's saying he got it from the Bible.
It was a huge revival there.
But we need to understand what the Bible says about those that are dead.
The dead know not anything.
Right. So let's go over a couple of scriptures. And when they shall say to you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that mutter and peep, or peep and that mutter, should not a people seek unto their God, for the living to the dead? So if you really think about that scripture, it's saying, no, wait a minute. Why would you seek out the dead? Why would you seek out a wizard? Why would you seek those that have familiar spirits when you can seek God? God has given us all the wisdom that we need. He's given us all the answers in His Word. True. We don't need to go to the dead for those answers. Yeah. Why is that? You know, this is Israel. It was talking to Israel. They were forbidden to communicate with the dead. I mean, it was a very stiff penalty.
And it's completely out of character. God is a God of patterns. He's not about throwing curveballs at His people. In the entire Bible, you never hear of someone being raised from the dead to go and give a message to anyone.
In fact, we see from Amos, it's in chapter 3, he says, the Lord God does nothing unless He reveals it to His servants, the prophets.
That's right.
So He reveals everything He's going to do, everything you need to know through those that are living, through the prophets. And of course, His word is living as well.
I think the state of the dead is important to understand due to the final things that are going to transpire on our earth. And if you're opening your belief to, okay, well, people can come back to the dead and give me some sort of message. Well, what if it was an apostle? Well, you know what I mean? What if like an apostle showed up and was like, well, you know, there's all these translations and they totally messed up what I wrote back there. This is what I really meant. And now they're reinterpreting what the context of that Bible.
It would be superseding God's written word. And then like, how would you ever know what was true?
That's right.
Right? There's no safeguards there. So yeah, communicating with the dead, serious matter. You were executed in Israel if you were caught doing that. Why? I believe because it's a counterfeit for the gift of prophecy. And it is a counterfeit for the truth. It's a counterfeit for communication. God said, no. I already have ways to communicate with you. You don't need this other form of communication. In fact, this is trying to impersonate my voice.
Yeah. And we know that the devil can impersonate people because of the story of Samuel, or the story of Saul conjuring up Samuel, right? We know that's not Samuel, but it appeared to Saul in the way that Saul thought it was Samuel.
So another verse, this comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 9. It says, "For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything. Neither have they any more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten." So I think this verse gives us a very strong clue. It says that they don't know anything. And if they don't know anything, they don't have any information for you or I. They can't, because they don't know anything. Which means if you're getting information from the dead, you're not getting it from the dead, you're getting it from another source. Because they don't have any information. And if someone dies and goes to heaven and come back, that's not dead. That's just living somewhere else, right?
Good point, yeah.
The Bible calls us mortals, right? Mortal means subject to death. It says that we put on immortality at the second coming. And it says that the only one who is immortal is God. So if we just continue to live somewhere else right after we're dead, right, then we also destroy the metaphor of the Bible that it's trying to teach us that we are dead to sin, right? Because what would it mean if you were, you're not really dead to sin because nobody really dies and you're just living somewhere else. So you're just living to sin somewhere else. Like it completely destroys what that means if we don't understand it from the biblical perspective. So being dead to sin means dead, no longer coming up again. It doesn't get raised, it doesn't speak, it doesn't live, it doesn't breathe, nothing, it's dead. And that's how we need to be to sin, is it needs to be completely not a part of our experience anymore. So I want to wrap this up, second to last slide here, with a quote. A quote I seen a long time ago, and I went to look up who said it, and there was a little more there than I had realized. It says, this is Stephen R. Covey, it says, "We see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it."
Scary thought.
Right? Yeah. We can only pay attention to so much. That's why we need the Bible. That's why we need the Spirit of God. But we also need to recognize that about ourselves, that we can only filter so much. And so we have to be very intentional on what we pay attention to. So my admonition to you is pay attention to prophecy. Pay attention to people, all right? The greatest tragedy in this world would be to ignore both and not be ready for the second coming or bring anybody with you.
That's very sad.
It is very sad. And so as we close this program, I just have one question for you that are watching. It's the same one from the videos that we've seen with Apollo Robbins. What am I wearing? Well, any closing thoughts from you guys about attention or anything that we've talked about today before we wrap up this show?
I think that, and just looking at some of the stories in the Bible, like Peter keeping his eyes on Jesus, and we're all going to go through a storm. We're all going to go through this rough time. And if the end of the world is like what the Bible says, like no other time that's been around, the only surety that we have is to keep our eyes on Jesus. And so I think, the devil's the master at magical, attention.
Illusions.
Illusions. And so, we'll find ourselves sinking if we cannot stay connected to Christ. And so I think, keep your eyes focused on him, and he will reveal to you and speak to your hearts.
Yeah, I believe that we need to double check what we believe. Because sometimes we have the faith growing up. But let me tell you, that faith, it was your parents' faith. What about your faith? You get up in the morning, you build up your faith. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna call my pastor. Hey, how you answer this day? No, let's build out your faith and let's focus what we're living, and I believe that we're gonna be passing the test. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my last thought is no pressure. You know what I mean? Like, we all make mistakes. We're all growing. I find so much comfort in the story of Saul, who turned into Paul. On the road to Damascus, he was seeing the world through his conditioning, through his lens. And God had to drop the scales from his eyes. But God didn't just leave him there. He surrounded him with a community of believers, people to hold him accountable and him to hold other people accountable. So just to keep that in mind as we go through life, to be intentional.
Yep.
Have God on the throne of your heart for sure. That will definitely help you navigate through this life, and so that we're not among the number that is deceived in the end times. Yeah.
All right, well, we hope you've enjoyed this program. This has been another episode of LED Live, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also share this video with your friends and family. And we hope to see you on the next one. You can catch every episode on Friday at noon, and we hope to see you next Friday. Take care.
I love it. I mean, I can't watch enough of it.
The duelist who they say can speak with the spirits. The sins will destroy the commandments forever.
A suspicious list of names prompts an investigation at a local school and concern from parents.
The Death Note is derived from a Japanese animated show.
The girl told authorities she got the idea from a Cartoon Network show.
Mom, it's Mr. Satan. I recognize that voice anywhere.